بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا المرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Dear brothers and sisters, today I'd like to talk to you about Ramadan and mental health, looking particularly at loneliness, which seems to be an ongoing pandemic in this 21st century, which has been exacerbated by COVID-19, and looking at strategies to help us reduce this feeling of loneliness and the genuine loneliness within our community, inshallah. So Ramadan has always been a very sociable time. It's amazing that so much of our religion is very much communal, whether it's congregational prayer, whether it's Hajj and Umrah, whether it's giving charity. It's not a religion meant for monks and people of absolute isolation. It is very much that we are interconnected as human beings, interconnected as one brotherhood that feels the pain. If one limb is hurting, the rest of us hurts. And so when we're not able to perform our worship, particularly the month of Ramadan in the way that we are used to, with that massive community spirit, we feel that pain, we feel that absence. So looking at mental health, when we're not able to get this social connection, it has an adverse impact on our mental health and our well-being. And that has an indirect consequence on the quality of our worship as well. On this slide, I've just listed some of the factors that might be impacting us in the month of Ramadan in terms of our mental health. So the most basic one is a change in pattern, really. So that's our sleep. Poor quality sleep or less sleep has a direct impact on the quality of our mood, the quality of our relationships, our emotional regulation, our ability to control our temper. And there has been a short clip that I've produced already on how to optimize the quality of our sleep during Ramadan. So inshallah, if you can nail that, it's not about sleeping a lot, it's about sleeping effectively, sleeping smart, as one would say. Also, many of us don't undertake as much physical activity. Physical activity is associated with superior mental and physical well-being. So it's important to maintain some form of exercise, whether that's a simple walk, whether that is, something that you used to doing before Ramadan, provided it's not high impact or dehydrating, and that it's done at the right time of day. So ideally either after Fajr or a stroll after Maghrib if you are going to head to the mosque for Tarawih. A change of diet. So diet has a definite impact on our mental health. Unfortunately, many of us eat more fried foods, the pakoras, the samosas, the koftas, the pastries. Many things come out in Ramadan that we don't eat all year round. So we give our gut a real workout when we break the fast. And associated with that, a sugary food, we feel that we must have these sweets and treats. In fact, our diet should be a lot simpler. And while we're doing this for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the additional benefit is if we do give our gut a proper and real rest. Fried foods, sugary foods, all these things cause inflammation, including inflammation in the brain, which can lead to brain fog, increased tiredness, and mood swings. Mental health illness is something that we've become a lot more aware of over recent years. And a significant proportion of the population, at least 10%, suffered with depression at some point in their lives. But alongside we see anxiety, eating disorders, many conditions. Now, most people with mild to moderate mental health conditions are able to fast. They may be taking a once daily antidepressant, which should be fine to continue with, or undertaking talking therapies. However, there are certain conditions where it may not be safe to fast. For example, if you have significant eating disorders such as anorexia, or where you may have bipolar or other conditions where you're acutely mentally unwell and you're not able to manage without your medication, or the impact of missing the medication or changing the routine or pattern may cause a deterioration in your health and well-being. So these cases should be discussed on a one-to-one basis with your own GP and perhaps with a person of knowledge. The additional factor is COVID-19. We're now starting to see some of the aftermath of long COVID, so COVID, coronavirus illness, where symptoms go on beyond the 4 weeks, and post-COVID syndrome, where they go on beyond 12 weeks. And associated with that is a definite recognized increase in things like depression, anxiety, and sleep disturbance, which may also be impacting mental health. Of course, some of us may have experienced adversity last year, with loss of family members or loved ones, and that may also carry over a negative impact into this Ramadan with feelings of fear and trauma. Multitasking is never good for us at the best of time. I'm just as guilty as everybody else, unfortunately, but it doesn't do us any favors in terms of our mental health. You'll be much more productive just doing one thing at a time in a mindful fashion. Then we have workplace challenges. Is it hard for you to get time, off to break your fast? For example, if you work on a shift pattern, are you working nights? Is your workplace understanding around the factors around, facilitating your worship, around facilitating fasting and prayers, etc. going on, those things can be just an added ongoing background stressor, really, unless you have a frank discussion or you have understanding work colleagues. We then have communal activities such as Salah, Tarawih, Iftar, etc., which have all been compromised by social distancing that is necessary at this time. Loneliness, which is an ongoing epidemic or pandemic, if you want to call it. It's definitely an epidemic in this country. And London's been rated as one of the loneliest countries in the world, despite it being absolutely wonderful in many other ways. So recognizing what that looks like, what the factors are that drive it, and how we can decrease it, particularly at this time where we're not engaging in as many communal activities, and the impact of lockdown. What is loneliness? Is loneliness being alone? Is it that you have no friends or family? Or can you be lonely in a crowd? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us that he's created us as nations and tribes so that we may know one another. And essentially, the vast majority of human beings are social creatures to some degree, some to a greater degree than others. Of course, we have people who are naturally introverted and people who are neurodiverse, but it doesn't mean that they don't feel the pain of loneliness, and that we are meant to function as communities, and these communities have been decimated by lockdown, by the sickness of COVID, and by modern living where family infrastructure is broken down, communities are broken down, where your social interactions perhaps at work and the quality of that interaction is not as good as within a neighborhood. So what exactly is loneliness? So you can be lonely in a crowd and you might not be lonely on your own. It is the subjective emotion and pain experienced by one who perceives the absence of and longing for rewarding company social relationships. Basically, it means that if you perceive that you're lonely and you feel that pain, that is when you are suffering with loneliness. It is not necessarily the act of being alone. So, for example, if you go to Itikaf, you may not necessarily experience loneliness because you're not feeling that pain, yet you are alone with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, with intimate discourse with the Lord. According to the BBC Loneliness Survey in 2019, loneliness has various manifestations in a very practical and easy to understand way. It may be a feeling of having nobody to talk to, feeling disconnected from the world, feeling left out, a feeling of sadness and not feeling understood. And I'm sure these are feelings that many of us can relate to at some time or another. In a busy social gathering, but actually you're sitting there without anyone to talk to, or left out of the topic of conversation, or you feel that your friends don't have enough time to speak to you, or your family members are busy, or you just feel that you don't belong where you belong. And these are common feelings, by the way, and they're harmful. So the Royal College of Nursing has noted that loneliness is as harmful as the impact of obesity or smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So what does that really mean? Well, we know that obesity above a certain level or smoking at 15 cigarettes a day or more has a significant adverse impact on our health in terms of reducing life expectancy and increasing the risk of disability. It's associated with cognitive decline, meaning a disease such as Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, memory loss. It's a significant risk factor for anxiety and depression. There's an increased risk of disability, as we've discussed. There's also a stigma of accepting that acknowledging that you might be feeling lonely. It basically makes you look like you're not in. There's something wrong with you. It's very easy to personalize the feeling of loneliness and to internalize it and see it as something lacking in your own social skills or your own personality, your own behavior, or something wrong with you, which is not necessarily the case. It can also damage our confidence and ability to build healthy relationships. And many people will probably be coming out of COVID and lockdown thinking, how do I hold social connections and relationships again? How do I entertain? How do I hold a healthy conversation? And coming back to the BBC loneliness experiment in 2019, so remembering this is pre-COVID, it's very interesting to see this is a UK-based study in which 30 to 40% of people reported feeling lonely very often in the UK, and and a good number of people felt lonely some of the time. It's also interesting that the younger people are more likely to report loneliness, whether this is an absolute feeling of loneliness or that they're more willing to share this or acknowledge this, or perhaps they are the internet generation. It's hard to know, but 40% of 16 to 24-year-olds reported feeling very lonely, compared with 26% of over 75s who we would expect are probably lonely in the sense of having fewer people around them, having lost family, friends, spouses, yet they're less likely to report. So there's something very interesting in this data. So what are the spiritual antidotes to loneliness? Well, these have traditionally been family, community, and congregation, and we are going to probably have to address these in a new way, inshallah, until Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lifts this pandemic from us. We've been encouraged to pray in Jama'ah, in congregation. That Tarawih has historically taken place in a masjid, while Qiyam al-Layl is the salah that we offer at home. The iftar meal, where we come together, we share a meal, we feed other people, and we're told not to create circles of wealth, but rather to make our wealth circulate in the community. To visit the masajid, particularly for congregational salah and Jum'ah prayer, Hajj and Umrah, and many, many other examples. In fact, there are so many that I couldn't list the hadith here. We have the extended family system where everybody has a place within the family, whether that's in inheritance or whether that's in the order in which we extend our closeness to them. There are the rights of your neighbors. The Prophet was once concerned that your neighbor had so many rights upon him that he would end up inheriting. And the rights of our community, the Fard al-Kifaya, communal obligations, where you can't have a communal obligation unless you have a community. In the Fatiha, we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us collectively, and that we seek help from him collectively. It's never on a one-to-one, really. When we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, many du'as are Rabbana, oh Allah, oh our Lord. And just some hadith here that from narrated in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, that whoever does not show mercy to our young ones and acknowledge the rights of our elders is not one of us. And this verse in Surah An-Nisa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, worship Allah alone and associate none with him. Be kind to parents, relatives, orphans, the poor, the near and distant neighbors, your close friends, needy travelers, and those bondspeople in your possession. Surely Allah does not like whoever is arrogant and boastful. This is an amazing verse. It basically sums up the entirety of my talk, and the entirety almost of how we should give huquq al-ibad, the rights of other people, the rights of the servants and creatures of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a pecking order here, and it's important to pay attention to this. So first and foremost, our parents, then our kinsfolk, You know, those most vulnerable in society, the orphans, the poor, our neighbours near and far, our friends, people who are vulnerable because they're travellers, and people over whom we have rights, perhaps our servants, our helpers, our cleaners, our employees. Everybody has a right on us. And if we were to simply refocus and recenter, we would send out ripples of goodness through the community and through society if we were all to take care of those who are in our immediate circle. It's also important to note that Prophet ﷺ narrated from Abdullah ibn Umar, narrating Ibn Majah. Ibn Majah, the believer who mixes with the people and endures their annoyances is better than one who does not mix with them at all and does not endure their annoyances. So there's something about dealing with the harm that people put in our way, and that comes alongside the rewarding relationships. And, you know, I was just discussing with my children the other day that the reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps mentioning relationships in the Quran is because we're not meant to be solitary beings. We're not meant to go and hide at the top of a mountain or in the desert. It might be beneficial for a period of time. We need to disconnect from dunya, but it's not meant to be the longer term path. And in fact, you know, it's like this double-edged sword that someone once describes, that when we interact with people, we are, inshallah, refining our character. And with that comes the pain of the other side of the sword, which is the hardships of the interaction and the challenges. And before I go on to this, I just had a couple more hadith to remind us, actually, because it is so beautiful. That in Al-Adab al-Mufrad of Imam al-Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ has been reported to have said, anyone who wants to have his provision expanded and his term of life prolonged should maintain ties of kinship. I just find this is such an amazing hadith, because if we won't look back earlier and we're comparing loneliness to smoking and to obesity, well, we know they are definite health hazards. But here we're being told that actually by connecting our blood ties, we're improving our quality of life and our lifespan according to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. So it's absolutely amazing that these simple things, and it's because loneliness is a stressor. It produces stress hormones and it makes us sick mentally and physically. So how can we manage this? So there are some strategies I put down on this slide. Firstly, looking at self-management. What can we do on our own that doesn't really require a community approach? The first thing might be asking ourselves, do we feel lonely? Why do we feel lonely? When do we feel lonely? What has worked in the past when we felt lonely? So identifying those strategies that work for us. Has it been picking up the phone? Has it been visiting somebody that you could visit in your bubble? Has it been, you know, doing something for charity? What has taken away that feeling, that pain of loneliness from you? Having compassion towards others. So when people are angry, upset, or miserable, it may not be that they're directing their anger towards us, or they may be unknowingly or subconsciously doing this, but recognizing that they may just be having a hard time and not taking their attitude personally allows us to be compassionate towards them, allows us to help us relieve their burdens and reach out to them, and build up our own resilience towards feeling that the discomfort when other people are not in a good place. Having self-compassion, so looking after ourselves, having self-care and valuing this life and the body and the health that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, so taking time to pay attention to that. And then pro-social behaviour. So other people may also be feeling very nervous in this pandemic in terms of reaching out and engaging. We're all probably a bit cocooned and functioning in a not very human-like fashion, but reaching out to our spouses, our social networks, growing our social networks is still very, very doable. It may not take the same format as in regular, you know, social intercourse that we may have had, but the internet has opened up channels for us to meet people from all over the world. And many of you who will be listening to this video, I may not have ever met, but inshallah, you know, we may be part of a larger community through Uthridge or through other means. Having a daily routine, so having purpose to your life, having a routine, having something beyond yourself, is very, very important. And knowing when you're going to meet that personal need of yourself, that need that makes you tick, gives you that life purpose, and creating time for it on a daily basis. Other things that can help dissipate the pain will include meditation, yoga, and Tai Chi. And of course, ultimately, the most important thing is our spiritual connectivity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But by design, He's created us to be social creatures. He's even created the birds, the bees, the insects in colonies and flocks. And that's why we have collective nouns. So it doesn't take away, but it helps us to manage that pain and helps us to strengthen our connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then you've got things that you would get from being with other people. So we make masafa, how we shake hands or we embrace. We're actually releasing oxytocin through oxytocin, the love hormone, the connection hormone, that helps us feel emotionally regulated and secure. And that's something that we may be missing. So lots of extra hugs for kiddies and spouses and people that you're allowed to hug in your bubble, obviously within Islamic parameters, cuddles, tactile contact, and those things are all very replenishing. And for some people, weighted blankets are quite useful. It's just having that deep pressure therapy, which gives you the feeling of embrace. It has been shown to help manage stress and help manage anxiety. And some people may find that helpful. And then looking at a community approach. So we've already spoken a bit about the ripple effect. So the first people to prioritize will always be, once we put ourselves in the right place would be your parents, because we cannot repay their debt and what they've done for us. So parents, family, I've left out a comma, sorry, friends, and whether that's by WhatsApp, by phone, by Zoom, you'll find that many people are probably not reaching out. So be the first one and remind yourself of the hadith that the person who says salam first gets the 99 rewards. So inshallah, just reach out, pick up the phone and speak to someone. Remember to share food and presents, and with your neighbours, just ask how they're doing. It's really important that you start to build those connections. Alhamdulillah, that's one thing really positive that's come out of this lockdown, that we've really, started going out for walks with neighbours. They're not Muslims, but it helps create this feeling of community, helps normalise Muslims, and build a neighbourhood, which is really important. Turn your home into a mini masjid, have a musalla, have a place for prayer, make it congregational, get your children to the iqamah if possible, and make it the cornerstone of your family routine. Structured family time is structured, non-chore based quality family time is very important. So whether you build in time for play with your family, or time to watch something relaxing, or time to do, to go out together, having family meals at least once a day has been shown to significantly improve the mental health of children. And it's very, very grounding. You sit down. I mean, food is our essential social connection, really. And before the era of snacking and eating on the go, it would be a time where, you wouldn't eat on your own, you would eat with other people. And I'm currently doing some therapy with a lady who lives by herself. And we're doing some work around obesity, and she's recognized that when she sits with others and she's eating outdoors, actually she feels satiated a lot quicker. And that's what we would call barakah in our terms. Giving charity, especially if there are needy people that there are many people, many refugees, many asylum seekers, many needy people right on our doorsteps within our communities. Seek them out, go and help them. And you don't have to ask them. It's quite obvious that they may well be in a regardable situation. But even beyond that, give them a gift and remember to make that wealth circulate. And it has a very different feeling to just giving online. And remember, you can also give of your time, your skills. All of this is gratitude back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Picnic iftars, so maintaining the household rules because they won't change until the 17th of May again. But you can have one family outdoors in your garden or in the park, inshallah. And perhaps, if it's appropriate, perhaps you could do a Maghrib prayer out there as well. Have some plans for after lockdown, inshallah, and inshallah for after COVID. That's been associated with good long-term health. And remember, you can keep building a community online. So while we're not able to meet indoors in spaces, we can keep up the good work. So inshallah, don't lose heart or lose hope. Most people have transitioned to an online platform, which will be able to go back face to face, inshallah. But remember, find that common goal or that purpose that you know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given you. Search deep inside yourself, identify it, find like-minded people and work towards that goal. And you can keep building these projects, inshallah, until, you know, come out of lockdown and you have something massive to do, something amazing that will be life-changing and will make a difference to the world. And remember to send a gift to people. Sometimes you don't even need to tell them that you've sent a gift, or send them an iftar meal. And inshallah, you know that the reward is not just with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the sense that, you know, you will get that reward for breaking their fast or for spreading love, but actually you get a direct hit of dopamine, a positive feeling inside yourself. And lastly, my last tip is that we make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala live this pandemic, and to help us keep our family ties and build good connections and perfect our character. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, inshallah, and I wish us all excellent physical, mental and spiritual health. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.